Heyo, welcome everyone to Today in the Scene by Indie Arcade Wave. I'm Joe, your host, and here on In the Scene, we dive into what's happening in the arcade space, from new arcade developers, arcade owners, and operators, and just news in the space in general. Now, I've been with Galactic Battleground for over 6 years now. We've been showing it off all over the country. We have multiple models of that, as well as we just finished Food Fight Frenzy, that is an Atari license. And I love making games. I love meeting people that make games, and I love just talking about indie games. I think it's such a cool scene that these people are taking the time to develop a game for the arcade space and then throw it into a cabinet, building a cabinet from scratch, however they're doing it, and then presenting it. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today is a new game called Diebreakers. It is available at Wonderville. I think it's still there. I hope it is. Shown off last week. And we've got Walt and Matt with us this week to talk about what Diebreakers is and how it all came to be. So how you guys doing?
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having us.
How's it going?
Yeah, it's going great. Thanks for coming on, guys. I appreciate your time coming to chat on the show and just talk about the game. I haven't played it yet, but I have seen a lot of videos from the Wonderville the night that they held the tournament, the debuting night, and it looks sick. It looks like a mixture of a handful of classic games with like a new twist, a little bit of like a death ball. I don't know if there's any inspiration in there from Tony, but let's just jump right into you guys. Who's Walt? Who's Matt? What do you guys do? And like, how did you get into game design and cabinet building?
Yeah, sure. I'll start. My name is Walt. My name is Walt Mitchell. I'm a software engineer. I was a web developer for many years and then got into making games. I currently work at Blizzard, but I'm not, needless to say, speaking for Blizzard. I'm here on behalf of Blizzard, and my views are my own and all that stuff. And Diebreaker is very much just a project that I do in my free time. Before I worked at Blizzard, I worked in advertising and web dev, and I lived in New York City, which is where I met Matt. We worked together at a creative agency.
Yeah, so I'm Matt Fry. Like Walt said, we met at a creative agency some years ago here in Brooklyn. I still work there. I do creative tech and experiential stuff. My background's in architecture, so I kind of carry that over into my work, and I also influence some of the game fabrication and design that I do now, that I do with Walt and Dyebreaker and a few others. And yeah, it's a fun side project that I have with a bunch of different devs in the area, and build a few games that are at Wonderville, at the place that we kind of congregate, and a couple other places too. Excited to talk with you and talk to you about what we've done on Dyebreaker.
Yeah, if I can shout out our other members of the team. Sorry. We're 4 people. Like I said, this is sort of a side project for all of us. We all have our own stuff during the day, but it's me on the game design, game development side of things. Matt does the cabinet design and fabrication. But not here tonight are Ramsey Haefner, who is sort of our resident artist. He does the character designs, a lot of the UI design, a lot of the pixel art. I also do some pixel art, but not the good ones. And then the music and sound is our friend Devin. DD Curry is his name that he performs under. He's a musician, and he's done all our music and sound effects. And he just put it up on SoundCloud, by the way. If you're into listening to the soundtrack, it's so good.
It is good. It is definitely. I agree. It is good. I was just gonna say, after you were talking about him, I was like, the soundtrack was really cool. Like, I was listening to it during the tournament, and it's different. It's very different than what you would expect from an indie game. Especially nice. Like, the older stuff is kind of what we're all inspired by, right? So those soundtracks are very limited for what they have for sounds, and it's just, he did what he felt like doing, and then every level sounds a little bit different. It's very unique and interesting, and the pixel art's awesome too. I love everything about the game. I need to play it. I want to get my hands on the cabinet, but Brooklyn's far away, so I'll try to get out there.
Oh, that's right. It is a ways for you, huh?
It's on the list. It's very high on the list of places to visit, but. Let's talk a little bit about, so we know the team, we know what you guys do. Let's talk a little bit about the idea for the game. So you guys knew each other, you kind of were spitballing this back and forth. How did you guys come up with the idea for Diebreaker?
Well, Matt and I have worked together on a lot of things and a lot of creative projects over the years, but Diebreaker in particular was something that I was working on that I didn't know if it was going to turn into anything, really. We go to MagFest every year, Music and Games Festival in National Harbor, Maryland. Giant volunteer run retro games and music convention, where a lot of the games from Wonderville, the Arcade Commons games, go down there every year. And it's been such a huge inspiration for me and my game dev journey over the years, but I had never made my own game. And I went to MagFest 2023, I guess it would be, and I saw so many cool new games. It was the first MagFest I've been to since the pandemic. And I'd just been starved of that energy for the intervening years. And so seeing everyone's cabinets and all those things in person, it was like, okay, I really need to make something. So I was trying to come up with a simple arcade game that could be played specifically in that environment, where people are just sort of walking by and walking up to different cabinets and trying different things, be very approachable, be very, visually enticing, fun and unpredictable, but not confusing, not even that deep. I love Killer Queen. It's a huge influence, but I'm not going for that level of like strategic depth you can really get into. Like
very complex game.
Yeah. The complexity there is part of the appeal, but it's also not what I'm going for. More the variance that I'm looking for comes from just the physical nature of the game and the different levels that you can play that are shuffled and interactive in different ways. But yeah, that's speaking in hindsight. At the time, I was just really messing around for a few months, just trying a bunch of different ideas. I knew I wanted to do kind of a platformer like a Duck Game or a Tower Fall or a Death Ball, which I didn't know at the time. But I've since heard a lot of people compare it to Dyebreaker, mostly because I wanted to learn about 2D platformers in Unity, which I'd never done before. So that a lot of the impetus for the game was just what I think what would be cool to learn, learning tile maps in Unity or learning how to mix a physics engine with arcade physics and stuff like that. So I just kind of hacked at different ideas. For a while there, you were shooting pucks instead of hitting it. You would pick up items and shoot it in the goal, and it was too easy. And tried a lot of different ideas, and eventually landed on this sort of air hockey-like mechanic where you're sort of slamming into the puck and banking it off of walls and getting it into the goal.
So a bit of context on the finished game. My elevator pitch for Dyebreaker is that it's an air hockey platformer inspired by screen print poster art. It's a 4-player arcade sport where scoring goals paints the arena in your team's color. Painting the whole arena wins the round and adds one layer of color to your team's screen print poster. So you're sort of banking the puck off walls, scoring goals, pushing your color, tug-of-war style, to the end of the field. And when you get there, you add a layer of paint to your poster. The games consist of many short rounds like that. Each round is on a stage that's pulled from a large pool. The stages are all different, interactive in different ways. The winning team is the first one to win 3 stages and finish painting their unique poster. There's a variety of themed playable teams, each with unique characters and a signature graphic design style for their poster. At the end of the day, it sort of plays like Duck Game meets Video Ball.
Yeah, I like it, and obviously you weren't aware of Death Ball, but it does draw a lot of similarities to the way that the game is played. But I think it definitely stands out on its own. Like it doesn't look like a clone by any means. It's like it is its own game, and I think it's really unique that you have what's the grab? It's like the sling. Is that what it's called?
The fling.
The fling, and then what's the other one? The dash or the
it is known as blast.
Blast. Okay. Yeah. So those two moves are pretty unique, and it kind of changes each player's ability in the game. I think that was a good add to it. I think the game's cool and everything. Let's talk about the cabinet design now. So Matt, you built the cabinet. You came from an architectural background. I can see you have cabinets in your background as well right now, so clearly you know what you're doing. So kind of walk us through the process of taking this game, the idea of the game, and building the cabinet around it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I guess I started my first cabinet. Actually, it might have been this one here. This is my game Massive. Also influenced by just the community around Wonderville, and which was previously Death by Audio Arcade, but is now Arcade Commons, which is a kind of indie game collective here in Brooklyn. And working with Walt and our friend Nick too, who's made a few games. I was just kind of inspired by that energy and wanted to get into the game making process. So first started with working on my V1 Massive here, but then have worked on almost, I would say, around 10 different games now, and some of them have various copies of them. But I've kind of honed my skills over the years, specifically with the arcade building, but taking my kind of design background from architecture, and I've designed interior spaces and events for like brands and whatnot. Just kind of putting the stuff that I've learned over the years from that into the arcade kind of form. And actually, I've been building up my own workshop here in my apartment over the years. Eventually just had basically a saw and a table, and kept getting into it and kept building more and more, buying more and more tools and filling my apartment with sawdust over time until eventually I can close it off and got a CNC actually in my place. Couldn't fit a full blown big 8x4 flat CNC, but I found this one. It's called the Maslow CNC, which is basically like a vertical full size CNC that I was able to get into this apartment. And I've built now 3 cabs on that. It's worked out pretty well. It took a while to calibrate it and kind of get used to it, but I love using it. So that's what I built Dyebreaker with, and built it in my apartment here too. But yeah, just every time I work on a new cabinet, I learn new things, and I look back at my previous builds and I'm like, oh, that sucks. I can't do that again. But I'm always looking forward to the next one to improve the process, try new things out. And of course, just working with friends, working with Walt and like I said, Nick on the games that we make has been a real joy. So it's something I love doing on nights and weekends, and can't wait to make even more Dyebreaker as we go forward.
So what other games have you made then, Matt? Like, what other games have you built cabinets for?
So I've got 2 copies of Massive here. I also worked on a Kung Fu Kickball, a custom one that's in a hotel here in Brooklyn. It was basically we had to make sure the design fit with the aesthetics of the hotel there. So it's like an all wood cabinet with like really bright yellow paint on it. So it doesn't have like all the art of the standard cabinet. But I had fun working on that one. I've also worked on a game called Hirana, which is a touch-free cabinet that DBA/Arcade Commons kind of helped fund and is in Wonderville as well. I worked on Hoverburger, which was another recent one with our friend Nick. That's also in Wonderville. I've also done a lot for clients as well, rebranding classic games and making custom cabs or making like one-offs for events. But yeah, it's starting to rack up now.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that you had worked on all those different games when you were first coming into the interview, and I'm familiar with, I think, pretty much all of those being at Wonderville games. I've had Mark on here a handful of times. We've talked about the catalog there, and I think that's really cool. So I guess, Walt, you're working for a big company like Blizzard, who has massive games. Why did you decide you wanted to make your own game? Was this just I'm just going to try this and see what happens? Or have you developed a handful of other games by yourself too?
I've developed a few smaller games. Back maybe 5 years or so ago, I wanted to make the jump from web dev to game dev and do that professionally, and decided that, well, I don't even know if it was a conscious decision, but I just started to do that more in my free time because that's where I wanted to end up. So I started making little Pico 8 games. So I made a demake of Black Emperor, Bumblebear game. Made that demake for Pico 8, which is really fun. That was kind of like my first full game project. Again, to shout out our friend Nick Centinello, getting his 4th shout out of the show. I think he taught a class on Pico 8 that really lit the fire under me for game development, and got me going. I ended up making an original game called Tuck and Rolo, sort of a side-scrolling Ghosts and Goblins sort of action game, also for Pico 8. And that was really fun. And then when I did make the jump to game dev at Blizzard, I kind of stopped working on my own stuff because I was so focused on that career shift and that just wrapping my head around all the stuff I needed to do at my day job. And then I also had a child. I have a 2.5-year-old girl. Both those things happened, and I did not spend any time working on games for a long time. And then I mentioned that MagFest I went to, where it was kind of a reminder that I really need this part of my brain to be working and have my own creativity. And even if my work is satisfying and where I want to be, it's also not my own thing that I'm owning and I'm doing with my friends and I'm exploring new ideas. I also like game design, which is not something I do in my day job. I'm a software engineer and I don't work on the game design side of things, so that's really fun to do on my own games. And like I said, it's just a great way to learn new things just by doing a project, picking up a new game engine or something. I'd like my next project to maybe be an Unreal, just so I can get a little more comfortable with the engine. That's usually how I start, and then it turns into some idea that I like making. And then really, like Matt said, it's just to get to work on stuff with my friends. Like, we're always talking about game ideas and things we could build together and crazy cabinet ideas and form factors. And so it's just a fun thing to do together. So that's probably the real answer, the short answer.
I love that it's just like a super fun hobby for you. Like, I mean, you're obviously busy, like working with Blizzard, having a 2-year-old, like you're still finding time to play and have fun and like, get that like youthful feeling of I'm going to try something new or learn something new. Shout out Tomas, the creator of Black Emperor. His story is amongst my favorites of like all the indie developers, just because he like took such a dramatic turn from I'm going to be in film and do all this stuff. And now I'm going to just go to school in New York, leave my country and like learn how to code and make his first game was Black Emperor, which is nuts.
Yeah. He's amazing. I didn't want to say his name because I knew I was screw up his last name, Thomas Vicuña.
I believe
it, yeah, but he's so cool. And I got the pleasure of meeting him when I was working on the Black Emperor demake. And got him to play it and got some feedback from him on the motorcycle, but it needs to have more of a kick. When you first hit the button, it needs to kind of jump, and so it feels like it's really has feedback and
like you're getting on the throttle.
Yeah, exactly. So he has some great feedback, and he's probably the reason why the demake feels good at all. But he was really supportive. He's great.
Sweet. Yeah, I need to make it out to MagFest so bad. My game's been there the last like 4 or 5 years. Chris Myers brings all like the indie stuff that I cover usually there. So there's Wonderville and Chris and so many indie games there that I want to play. So that's on my list as well. I guess I'm just listing off places I'm trying to go for arcades. But let's talk, Matt, advice. So there are a lot of people that are interested in developing arcade games. I feel like the cabinet is amongst the most daunting tasks because like if you already know how to code, you're just you're making another game. But if you don't know how to make a cabinet, you're starting from square one, difference between digital and physical. So what is some advice that you would give to people who are building their first cabinets? And obviously, I'm going to say from your attestment there, like there's no excuse. You have a CNC in your apartment. So you should be able to figure this out. So what kind of advice would you give to those people?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, the CNC did take me a while to figure out. And, I definitely made some mistakes with it. But yeah, I mean, you can definitely get all of this stuff, for relatively cheap too, like the CNC in particular that I got. I think I got it on sale for like $750, which is like super cheap for the CNC. And, I use it for other like paying side projects too. So it kind of helps offset the cost. But I mean, I would say, having a friend or having a space, someone that has some of those tools already either at your disposal or that they can help you on is really helpful. Something nearby. That you can kind of knock ideas back and forth with, especially if you're going to make something actually like custom and not just go, off the shelf from one of the, arcade, 1UP, etc., where you can totally just put in your designs, put in your side art and get a kind of standard layout. Those places are out there and they're great. But if you want like something that's really your own, that you can put your own spin on it or if it has some unique controls to it, you kind of want to do something custom. So having either the time to learn those skills or a friend that's already in that kind of space definitely helps with that. And I think it's something that you can get better with over time. I think similar to the coding aspect of it, the first cabinet that you make is not going to be the best. You'll find that certain things like putting wheels on it or making sure that there's a back door that operates, just like the basic stuff that you may not think of when you first start actually end up being pretty important in the end. But I think as long as you're really into the process and you love your game and you want to make it look cool, it's worth it. I think, it's just about experimenting with different things too. Like one thing, if you can see in the back there, that's a small version of Hoverburger that I mentioned earlier. That's like a portable version that I wanted to fit in an overhead compartment in a plane, because we went to LA to 2-Bit Circus to show it off, and of course we couldn't take the full cabinet, and it was important for us to show off also the kind of vibe and form of the cabinet. So I made that smaller one there to fit on the plane. So you can start small. You can start with something that isn't necessarily as big and as daunting as a full cabinet, and just even with the console itself, because that's a huge part of it. When we make these in Unity or Unreal or whatever you may make it in, it's often either on a controller or on your keyboard. You're not really getting the sensation of what it would feel like to play it. But I think just even literally buying the joysticks, buying a couple buttons, learning how to use an iPack, getting just a small sheet of wood where you can cut the holes out and put the joysticks in, that's a great learning experience and a great place to kind of start the fabrication process and get a real feel for the game that you're making.
I 100% agree with you. I think when we built Galactic Battleground for the first time and Food Fight Frenzy, we just grabbed some plywood and just made like a little shelf and drilled the holes, put the buttons in there, and that's what we were playtesting on for months. Like that's all we did, and then we finally got the cabinets built later on. And it doesn't take a lot to get that tactile feel of the joysticks and the buttons. Like it's a few cuts with a table saw and some screws, and you're off to the races. So you can start very, very simple just to get it built up. And even like Tony from Deathball, he built just a play field that he has an iPack in, and he takes it to conventions and plugs it into a monitor, and you can play Deathball right there. So you don't have to have a full cabinet to show it off. You can have much smaller parts, and smaller part means a lot easier to build when you're starting off.
I think our friend Andy at Arcade Commons is going around with a foam console that he's attached joysticks in, because it's like very portable and soft. And yeah, so you can stick joysticks in anything.
Yeah, I've had Andy on here, and I mean that's brilliant. I didn't even think about having like a foam plate or whatever, but that's pretty cool. So were both of you there? I know Walt was. I heard him talking, but were you there, Matt, when they were showing off Dyebreaker at Wonderville?
Oh yeah, I was in the tournament.
Okay, perfect. So you guys put all this work in, all this time into it. What was it like seeing people play it? I mean, I know, Matt, you've had lots of cabinets that you've seen people play, but what was it like to have people play it and give you feedback? I always think about when I take the games to conventions, like when we first put Food Fight out and first time we put Galactic Battleground out, it was so rewarding to see people playing the game that we've spent so much time on. So how did that feel for you guys?
Yeah, God, I mean, so rewarding. It's really, really vindicating, exciting. It really surpassed my expectations for the party. We've brought it to a few like testing nights or local game dev nights here in Austin, which is where I live. More like a playtesting vibe where we're getting feedback and there are serious issues and we know the game's not done. And this was different. This was like, V1, even though we're planning other stuff, V1 is done. Like, we think the game is solid. The cabinet is done. It's beautiful. We get the last bit of art applied just a couple days before the party. So having everyone come, it was sort of a celebration. Like, it felt like a big milestone, and it was so fun. And my only hope was that the tournament would be fun, that it would be close and exciting, and that people would get into it. And my fear was that it would just be dull, or one team would dominate or something like that. And none of that happened. It was like a really close back and forth with lots of great moments, and that was all I could hope for. And you brought up getting feedback from people, and I did talk to people and hear what they had to say about the game, and it was so much better than I could have anticipated, because people were really calling out the stuff that I care a lot about. One guy was saying that everything he tried to do in the platforming when he went to move, like, he would think, oh, I wish I could do this, and he would try it, and he would do that, and it would work. And all the things that he expected to happen when he used the controls did happen, and that it felt just right when he moved, and he could double jump, and the movement felt just how he expected, which is so exactly what I wanted to hear, because as a developer, that's so important to me, that the movement and the player controls are probably what I spent the most time on if you're looking at hours in the code. So it was super cool to see that people not only had like a good time at a good party, but that they resonated with the game in ways that I had hoped they would. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, there's this one photo series that came out of it where I was playing the tournament with Ramsey, the guy who also worked on the art, and it was like this very direct series of like prototypical gameplay where we're all four of us are just like our mouths are open, just eyes stuck on the screen, really into it, and then like a big moment happens right at the end. They win, and my face, like, I just do this. I'm like, oh God, disappointed, lost. And they're like cheering and hugging each other. And then I recover, and then we shake each other's hands. We captured all of that in a series of photos that, like, I think really are proof of like a good game and a good tournament. So it went really well. And like Walt said, it's just great to see, just the natural excitement of people who've never played the game before, just actually having a fun time, because that's what it's about at the end of the day. But I think it's also like in that area in an arcade, it's a different environment, and obviously that's where we want all of our games to be. But that's not often where we see them, particularly in play testing or other achievements, where it's a natural environment that people are just walking right up to the cabinets. And it might be a little creepy. What I like to do sometimes is I'm playing the other games in the arcade, but I'll just kind of walk up behind one of the games that I've worked on and just watch people play and listen as they're doing it. And it's not always good feedback, or it's not always a great thing, which is still in itself good. But to be able to see just kind of the natural environment of people reacting honestly to the game that you've made is just a really cool thing to see. It makes it feel very real and a kind of thing that lives on its own. Like, you don't have to be there to tell people how to play it or give context to it. That they have everything they need right there in the console.
God.
I totally agree. I mean, like, when we bring it to conventions or we're at arcades or whatever, like, just kind of stand off a little bit, watch people play. You get the most honest feedback that you're going to get. If they know the developers are watching, they're going to be a little bit nicer about it, but it helps so much to get that like raw organic feedback from people while they're playing, when they have no idea anybody's watching or anybody that has worked on it is watching. Yeah. And I think it's so good that you guys were able to get that feedback. I feel like there's no better place than Wonderville to get that kind of feedback, except for, I don't know, maybe Glitch Bar, but you have so many people in there that are accustomed to indie games. Like, that's right. What they're coming to play is they're trying to play these weird, obscure games that nobody else knows, and they're looking, like, they're nitpicky. They're looking for little things to pick out, and that's so good, Walt, that that person really like honed in on the movement of the player, because you're right, that is like, there's so much time put into it, and that's the core of the game, is the what the player can actually do and how they have the ability to move. So that's really what I wanted to get out of the interview, is to kind of figure out what happened with the game, what it felt like to build it, and everything like that. So let's get social media shout outs that people can follow along with Dyebreak, as well as shout outs that you guys have for the community or people that helped you along the way.
Yeah, sure. Probably the best place to follow news with Dyebreaker specifically is Twitter, for better or worse. I do my indie dev as Running Jump. Go to runningjump.games is the website. But on Twitter, it's Running Jump Jump. Also on Instagram, Running Jump Jump. That's probably the best place to get quick updates and things. You can also go to Dyebreaker.com, which is going to be updated a lot more in the near future, but for now it has some basic information about the game and a woefully outdated gameplay video, but it's there nonetheless. I think that the Running Jump accounts will list our personal social media accounts, but if not, I think I have it nearby. No, I don't. But I'm Coffee Sandwich on Twitter, but you can probably follow Running Jump. That's where I'll talk about the game.
Yeah, and also shout Arcade Commons.
Of course.
Yeah, they're the kind of indie collective that we have been a part of for a few years, and Dyebreaker is also kind of in that group. We actually just opened up a new studio nearby in Brooklyn that we hope to like be kind of our HQ and build more arcade cabinets with. But they're at Arcade Commons on Instagram, and of course Wonderville. I think it's Wonderville NYC on Instagram. There's always stuff going on there, new games, new tournaments, weird events, stuff like that. So both of those are great follows as well.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say if you've been following the show for a while and you don't know about Wonderville or Arcade Commons or what used to be Death by Audio Arcade, I feel like you're not paying attention because I feel like I shout them out every episode. It honestly feels like I'm constantly talking about Wonderville just because of how unique of a space it is. But yeah, that's pretty much everything. I really appreciate you guys' time. It's a great game. I'm really excited to see what happens with it and moving forward. I mean, Kung Fu Kickball is starting to go into production and potentially going to be selling too. So you never know where these games are going to go. It starts as a passion project and turns into a lot more. So thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it. For anybody that's still watching, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us a ton. The wave will continue to grow and we can all ride it. We've got the Galactic Battleground Konami and Tabletop available for sale right now, along with the t-shirts, and Food Fight Frenzy is on its way. I don't know exactly when it's going to be available, but it's soon. But until next time, peace.